An ugly breakup between Livestrong and Sporting KC as the cancer charity's name comes down at Kansas City's soccer park. Plus, taxing violent video games in Missouri. Kansas Governor Sam Brownback delivers his State of the State address. And should you be required to live where you work? Why a new rule in the Independence School District is creating quite a stir. Welcome everyone, I'm Nick Haynes and it's good to have you with us again as we go beyond the soundbite and take you behind the headlines, making news in our metro, charged with dissecting that news in a pithy, insightful and lively way from News Radio 98.1 FM, Dana Wright, KCTV5 Chief Investigative Reporter Stacey Cameron, Kansas City Star blogger, reporter and columnist Dave Helling, and scouring the streets to bring you the news whenever it breaks, KMBC General Assignment Reporter Bill Grady. Now, in the same week that cyclist Lance Armstrong was making world news as he comes clean to Oprah about using sports-enhancing drugs, the Livestrong name is removed from Sporting Kansas City's stadium here in town. Though it turns out the two events are completely unrelated. According to news accounts, Livestrong, the cancer charity that Armstrong founded, terminated its relationship with the Kansas City Soccer Club, complaining that it didn't make good on its financial commitments, including a $1 million contribution in 2012. Livestrong says it received only $250,000 last year. Now, this was considered an unusual naming rights deal from the get-go. Traditionally, professional sports teams get millions to put their names on a stadium. So why did Sporting Kansas City decide to put the Livestrong name over the front door in the first place, where they would be on the hook for paying $7.5 million over 6 years, according to its contract, Stacey?
Well, it all goes to marketing. You can see this as being a different kind of naming rights agreement with a very popular charity at the time, Livestrong, which was most notably associated with Lance Armstrong and Nike. And a lot of people wore the yellow wristbands, supported cancer, and you have to look at those payments as more as a charity donation. So here's a corporation that could have reaped millions of dollars selling that right to someone else, say Cerner or Toys R Us or something locally, and instead they decide to donate that money to charity, to cancer research. And so the hope, I think, was to use Lance Armstrong more notably, get more events into that arena, say concerts and other types of sporting events, and therefore possibly in the long run they would actually gain in terms of marketing and dollars.
And we can forget that this was a really forward-thinking move because this really hadn't been done before.
No one else had done this before. I mean, you look, I used to work in minor league baseball, so the lowest levels of minor league baseball all the way up to the NFL and Major League Baseball sell those naming rights. No one had thought of this before, and at the time, a couple of years ago when this was announced, they wondered if more arenas would do this, especially when you look at kind of an off-the-radar sport like soccer. What do you need to do in a sport like that? You need to create buzz. So where the LA Galaxy brings in, David Beckham to create buzz, we kind of go in another way and we flip the script on how we named the stadium here in Kansas City.
Are we any the wiser this week as to why Sporting Kansas City didn't pay and make good on these financial commitments, or is there some concern as to whether the numbers from Livestrong are correct even this week?
The Livestrong people, Sporting Kansas City people are actually making some sort of an announcement today. They did say that they were concerned at the aggressive nature of the folks with Livestrong, and so there's this sort of standoff between the two of them. Again, more is supposed to come forward today.
It kind of smells to me like a business deal gone bad. And this is the way I look at it. I'm not a huge soccer fan, but if you know any of the sporting fans, they are crazy. I mean, they are nuts for this soccer team. And at the end of the day, it's not going to matter. You could name that stadium after the drug that Lance Armstrong was using to dope in the Tour de France, and they will still show up to support that team.
So you don't think they're hurt by this in any way?
God, no. You ask any of those soccer fans, they are crazy about that team. I don't think you could name it. I mean, right now it's Sporting Kansas City. I don't think it's going to matter what you name it. They're still going to go. I think it's unfortunate. I don't think it's going to matter.
Yeah, I do think that one of the questions that we do need to have answered is whether or not Sporting stopped its payments because it was worried about Lance Armstrong or being connected with Lance Armstrong and in essence wanted the divorce, or whether they weren't making enough money and therefore couldn't meet their obligations. And I'm not, that remains fuzzy in my own mind at this point. So as we get clarification on that, that'll be important to know. But I do think Dana is right in this sense. The idea that sporting clubs can market themselves through an attachment to another athlete or another popular figure is probably overblown. Sporting is doing well now because its team is winning. And that's the way to market your team, is to have a winning club, something our other sports franchises probably haven't figured out. And so my guess is one of the lessons learned nationwide from this incident, Nick, is that these kinds of arrangements are fraught with danger, and you ought to be very careful before you engage this type of thing.
Well, I think what we're going to come down to is some legal language in this agreement. When the club says that the foundation started to take aggressive tactics, I imagine there's a clause in there somewhere that is either tied to the revenue that the club makes or profit as to how much they're actually on the hook for total, or if there was some type of morals clause with respect to the foundation or Armstrong that might have kicked those payments down. So I think that's where there may be legal wrangling. And let's also go back and look, while the team is doing successfully on the field, they may not be as financially solvent as most of us think, because look, what's the big thing that drives sports? It's television rights, money. And they don't have a big deal in MLS. So while this team is starting to push the salary cap, they paid about $2 million in salary last year. You also have maintenance and operation at the stadium. You have salary for employees. So they may be up to the line of whether they're in the black or whether they're in the red in terms of the finances.
So even though the ticket sales and the merchandise sales are going well, other areas may not be?
Well, I think we need to keep in mind that as of July 31st, there's going to be an all-star game at the park. So to Stacy's point, that will bring television rights, and it's going to bring an enormous amount of revenue.
It's currently being called, they say, just Sporting Park. What about a new name for the stadium? They talked about having another charity be involved in this, but what about a commercial enterprise now suddenly wanting to put their name on the stadium? That could be worth millions and millions of dollars.
Not just soccer, for the reasons that Stacy and just talked about. Soccer doesn't get the kind of television exposure that you do for football or baseball, so the value of those rights are less than they are for other venues.
There was a mayor of Wyandotte County who just recently announced that he was stepping down after almost a decade of service. Could this now become the Joe Reardon Sporting Park? Dave Helling.
Well, Joe probably can't write the kind of check that Sporting would want to have.
But a wonderful honor for this
rights. And it's not a municipal operation, so that's probably not going to happen.
All righty. Even as President Obama unveiled plans this week for tighter gun control, state legislators in Missouri began preemptive action to counteract any coming regulations. Under a bill introduced in the Missouri Senate, federal agents trying to enforce new gun restrictions in the Show Me state would be guilty of a Class D felony. The measure seeks to nullify any federal law restricting semi-automatic guns and accessories beyond restrictions that existed at the end of 2012. Similar legislation had been filed in the Missouri House. By midweek, the measure had already gathered 70 co-sponsors. Joplin area lawmaker Casey Guernsey helped craft the bill.
You know, of course, it's brought about because of all the tragedies that's taken place over the last few months, which is, horrific. But it's unfortunate that so many people are willing to use those particular tragedies to further their cause of gun control. That is outrageous to me.
So can a state like Missouri, though, preempt laws that are coming from the federal government on gun control? Stacey?
No. It's that simple. The supremacy clause of the Constitution doesn't allow it. So if the federal government, either through executive order, through administrative action, or through legislation passes gun control laws, they can't do it. But more importantly, the states have no authority to arrest a federal agent who comes into the state to try to enforce a law. I mean,
why then is the state of Missouri, why are state lawmakers then pushing this?
It's good politics.
And it's getting a huge amount of co-sponsors already, Bill.
It is, and I agree with Stacey. It is good politics. This is an incendiary issue. It's timely because of the recent tragedy at Sandy Hook. And other states, by the way, Missouri is not alone in this. There are other states doing the same thing.
Okay.
A couple of points. First, this is an interesting, Stacey, of course, is right. You can't nullify federal laws. There is the supremacy clause. But a couple of states legalized marijuana smoking in November, and there is a coming clash between those state laws and federal laws which prohibit the possession of marijuana. That'll be a real test of the supremacy clause at some point, or could be anyway. Second point, nothing is funnier than watching state legislators complain about federal mandates and orders from Washington, and then turn around and order states and counties to do something. In this case, for example, the state does not allow Kansas City or St. Louis or any municipality to set its own gun laws because somehow the state is smarter than both the federal government and local governments. That always causes me to chuckle a little
if
bit.
Kansas City, Missouri, for instance, wanted to put some restrictions on gun ownership say Mayor Sly James wanted to do that in the city council, they couldn't?
Correct, and we spoke to Sly James about this, and it's frustrating to think that it is set up in a one-size-fits-all manner, that the rules for a Joplin, Missouri, and a very small rural town, pick your town in Missouri, are the same for St. Louis and Kansas City, where our homicide rate topped 100 last year. And so the mayor said, our hands are tied. We would like to do all kinds of things and think out of the box and look at other cities and what other municipalities have done specifically with urban core crime and black on black crime, and there is absolutely nothing we can do about it.
You know, the legislature does this a lot. The legislature prohibits cities, for example, from raising their cigarette taxes. You know, Kansas City might want to raise its tobacco tax to pay for things. The state legislature preempted that. That happens a lot.
But I should point out here, though, the Governor, Jay Nixon, a Democrat, said he would not support giving cities the power to regulate guns. This is not just a Republican issue. The Democratic governor says he wouldn't even allow that to happen.
Well, you know, gun control, in terms of favoring less gun control, is a bipartisan issue. You see Senator Joe Manchin, one of the more conservative Democratic senators, and he's not stepping out too far on a limb to say he's too far for gun control, and it's the fear for the powerful gun lobby. But let's go back to a minute for what Sly James said and some of the other city mayors. They are only pointing to gun control as the issues that will solve the murder rates in these inner cities. You want to think outside of the box, Mayor Sly James, then let's look at some things in terms of education and economics and poverty issues. It's not just guns. And while we're getting sidetracked on just guns, I think that needs to be pulled back in. Gun control isn't the only solution to this problem.
Well, Bill Grady at KMBZ, you decided to try for yourself this week how easy it is to purchase a weapon and what kinds of questions you might be asked. You showed up at last weekend's Expo Gun Show, which, by the way, as you can see from this footage from 41 Action News, saw huge crowds. Now, what kind of weapon were you looking to buy, first of all, Bill?
I went in with the idea of buying a low-cost, high-capacity type of what's pejoratively called an assault rifle. And I couldn't find the particular model I was looking for. I ended up buying a used, which some would say an assault rifle, some would say it's not. But the process was amazingly simple.
Okay, and were you, the question also was, were you asked any questions about a background check or anything of that nature?
No, but let me be clear about something. The gentleman I purchased this weapon from was not a licensed firearms dealer. He was a private seller. He didn't do anything illegal. I didn't do anything illegal. It's just that it was amazingly simple and took about a grand total of 2 minutes.
One of the things Bill taught me, which I think it bears repeating, we hear a lot about the gun show loophole, and it infuriates the gun nuts to hear that term. It's really, according to Bill, a private seller loophole that he could have left with 100 guns and sold them out of the trunk of his car to anyone he wanted with no background check at all. Anyone can do that legally in the United States. And I've asked time and time again why the gun dealers, why that doesn't bother them, that they can be in booth A and have to play by the rules, and some guy in booth B doesn't have to play by the same set of rules. And the president has said there is a great deal of space between the Second Amendment and no rules at all. And I think we're all trying to figure out what that space is right now.
Bill.
The only thing, and Dana's right, there really isn't a loophole in terms of the gun shows. The only distinction is, in a private sale, generally speaking, you're going to transact at someone's home. It's going to involve 1 or 2 weapons. If you go to a gun show, and a non-licensed dealer can have a whole array of weapons, variety, handguns, rifles, shotguns, because this gentleman had probably 2-3 dozen weapons. And so it really is, volume and variety that makes the distinction, if that in fact is a loophole.
Now, are we pointing, though, in the wrong direction by singling out guns? A Republican lawmaker from rural Missouri is this week calling for a sales tax on violent video games in response to the deadly Connecticut school shooting. Representative Diane Franklin of Camdenton said the proposed 1% sales tax would help pay for mental health programs and law enforcement measures aimed at preventing mass shootings. The tax would be levied on video games rated teen, mature, and adult only by the Entertainment Software Ratings Board, the organization in charge of rating video games. Even the NRA has pointed the finger at the video game industry and its role in mass shootings. So is this a proposal that's gaining any traction?
It may, in part because there is some effort to raise money. I do think in Missouri there would be a constitutional problem in taxing just certain video games, because then you're basing it on content in some ways, which is a subjective judgment and has a First Amendment problem. But you could tax all video games, for example, use that money for mental health. There is some discussion in other parts of the country of taxing weapons. When you sell weapons, increasing the tax on an AR-15 or something else, and using that money not only for mental health purposes, Nick, but to provide security at school districts across the country.
And we go back to there's just so many moving parts to the argument. We can talk about video games, and we can talk about mental health, and we can talk about guns, but the fact of the matter is other countries, including yours, my friend, have video games, and other countries have psychotropic drugs, and other countries have not near the volume of guns we have here, and no one has the gun homicide rate that we have in the United States. That is the problem, figuring out why we have the problem that we have and the volume of the problem that we have here.
It's also interesting, this is a Republican lawmaker in Missouri, Stacey, who is proposing a tax.
Right.
To propose, when they have been so vehemently opposed, Republicans in Missouri, even a cigarette tax increase, because they say that that was the wrong way of setting policy in Missouri.
Right, and then here we'll turn around when it's politically expedient to go ahead and tax something. You want to talk about gun control being a knee-jerk reaction. Well, taxing video games is a knee-jerk reaction too, especially when you start to talk about some of these games, as we've mentioned at the teen rating, are Guitar Hero and simulated living games like The Sims. Mental health, violent culture in video games and movies, and gun control all need to be on the table. There isn't any doubt. The reason we have a higher murder rate here in this country is because we do foster a culture of violence, and all of these things play in. But each side is digging in and trying to point the finger at someone else instead of having rational people come to the table. When you propose a 1% sales tax on video games, and even if you get that small amount of money that it would raise, it's not going to solve the issue. The mental health programs and the enforcement that this representative wants are targeted, and they're not going to go to the social cause that actually create this problem.
Video games, very much like movies, all have ratings, and I think it gets down to an issue of individual responsibility. We hear about young people playing these games. Why aren't the parents looking at what their kids are watching? I mean, they are rated, the information is pretty clear, and again, mom and dad, watch out.
Can I just say quickly that before we move off this topic that in a normal political culture, all of the things that have just been talked about around this table would probably be achievable. Maybe something about video games and the violent culture, maybe something about mental health funding, maybe something about paying for school security, and maybe doing something about the availability of guns. There is a deal to be made that involves all of the above. But in the contemporary political culture, Nick, and I think we're seeing this in Missouri and Kansas, certainly in Washington, everyone wants to attack everyone else's solution rather than to sit at a table and say, let's put everything out there and do some combination of it. I think there would be great support nationally for that kind of approach, but in our political system, it just doesn't seem to be there.
Kansas Governor Sam Brownback this week delivered his State of the State address, and even though some are worried about whether the state has cut taxes too far, he says he's ready to cut them even more.
When I started as governor, we had the highest state income tax in the region. Now, we have the second lowest, and I want us to take it to zero. Look out, Texas. Here comes Kansas.
Texas doesn't even have an income tax. Governor Brownback proposes reducing the highest income tax bracket paid by Kansans from its current rate at 4.9% to 3.5%. The rate for the lowest bracket would drop to 1.9% from 3%. But how would those be paid for when the governor also says basic services of government like education and social services won't even be harmed?
Well, if they don't do something in addition to that, there's going to be about a $267 million shortfall. So what the governor is proposing is extending a sales tax that was supposed to sunset very soon, as well as eliminating the mortgage interest deduction on the taxes. And that, according to the governor, would create a surplus. But there's a problem with both of those. Neither are politically popular. Cutting taxes, very popular. Raising any kind of taxes or continuing a tax that was supposed to sunset, very unpopular. So he's got a hard road to hoe on.
Okay, you talked about then the governor calling for the elimination of the mortgage tax deduction. That was tried last year and it failed. That's an average savings of $390 for most people. So isn't that going to be tough, Dave Helling, for the governor to pass?
Yes. Now, he's making the argument that that deduction is very valuable, worth much more than $390 annually to very wealthy people, particularly people who might live in wealthier areas like Johnson County, and that they're getting dinged because he's getting a lot of criticism for what we've talked about on this show, Nick, and that is he's really shifting the burden of government from the rich onto the poor in Kansas, both in terms of spending and taxation. It's very clear. And I think he's getting criticized for that, so he's making the case this mortgage deduction is actually valuable for richer people. But he could prove that he believes that by capping that deduction rather than eliminating it for all homeowners, even though with relatively cheap homes. And that might be, again, a way of compromise going forward. There isn't a lot of political support for it. There isn't a lot of support, as Stacey suggests, for keeping that sales tax either. If he doesn't get any of that, cutting taxes on the income side is going to be very difficult politically.
Right, and there's a hole in the government's argument, or the governor's argument there, because while the rich may pay more on that tax, it's a smaller percentage of their overall income. And also look at those tax percent cuts. So the rich are going to have their taxes cut 1.4%, where middle income and poor people are only going to see about a 0.6% reduction. Why isn't it equal? If you're going to cut it, then cut it equal. And then you talk about the sales tax that won't cut. That is a regressive tax, which those of us who buy goods in Kansas, for the percentage of our income, that's more money out of our pocket. So these tax cuts are benefiting the rich in Kansas, and the continued taxes or deductions that they get rid of really hurt middle income and poor people.
Just very quickly, the idea, though, of reducing income taxes to zero is all the rage in Republican governor circles. It isn't just Sam Brownback. The governor of Nebraska proposed it this week. The governor of Louisiana wants to eliminate that state's income tax. Oklahoma is pushing for a major reduction in income taxes, and of course it's a big issue in Missouri. Throughout the Midwest, the idea of zeroing out income tax is a pretty big deal.
The governor also proposes, by the way, a $14 increase per pupil spending for schools. The $76 million increase falls far short of a court ruling last week that ordered the state to increase spending by at least $440 million next year to provide what they called a suitable education for its school children. Does this elevate that clash with the courts we talked about last week, where the governor wants to change the way judges are selected?
Well, that's right, what's on the board here, because we're not talking about cases. We're not talking about issues in terms of things like abortion. We're not talking about trials. We're talking about the court forcing the legislature and the governor to spend more money, and they're tagging the court as liberal because they want more. So if the governor, he's assuming, if he can get control over the appointments to the Supreme Court, then he can appoint conservative judges that will draw back on that ruling and let the legislature define what a suitable education is, because right now the court is doing that.
Should you be required to live where you work? Well, the independent school districts think so. A new residency rule is shaking up their top staff this week. About 60 principals, assistant principals, and other independent school district administrators who live outside the district are going to have to start house hunting. A policy passed by the school board this week will force administrators to live in the district by February 2015. The idea was insisted upon by Superintendent Jim Hinson. But why, Stacey?
Well, Jim Henson is believing that the administrators should have more of a connection to the community in which they serve, much like firemen and policemen. So if you are more connected to the community, to the neighbors, then you're going to be more in tune. And plus, you're not participating in the tax base for which the school
Does that make sense, Dana?
This has been a long-standing policy with Grumbling in Kansas City, Missouri. All of the city employees and fire and police officers have always, I don't want to say been forced to live, but have had to live in the city in which they serve. I think there's an argument to be made for it. I don't know how I feel about it. I've never been forced to live in any city, but I think it's, if you know going in those are the rules, that's one thing. If the rules are changed midstream and you're asked to move, that's an entirely different situation.
In many school districts, it is not uncommon to have a requirement that the superintendent live within the district, but rarely does it go as deep as this proposal.
Absolutely.
And the board is kind of mirroring what Stacy said. They believe that all the employees, the administrators, would have a better connection to the community, especially in terms of tax issues that would impact the school district.
Dave, but we've had a lot of instances in this metropolitan area where they have residency requirements and people then try to circumvent them, don't
Right. Judges, other public safety officers. It's been a constant battle in Kansas City over the years to define what Kansas City is. Most police officers and firefighters, as a matter of fact, live north of the river, which sort of negates this connection with the community argument that you hear sometime. I've often said that the best argument for residency is the tax argument. If you're a public employee getting your money from taxpayers, you ought to be one of those taxpayers. That doesn't always go over very well with public employee unions. But that's quite common around the country, and my guess is will remain common around here.
I think it's this simple for parents and administrators. Do you want an administrator making rules for your kid's school, and they may send their kids somewhere else to another school? It comes down to that.
And that is all we have time for. Our thanks to our news reviewers from KMBZ, Bill Grady, and from KCTV5, Stacey Cameron. From KMBZ's Dana and Parks, 2 to 6 weekday afternoons, Dana Wright, and every day in the Star, Dave Helling. I'm Nick Haynes from all of us here at KCPT. Thanks for spending part of your weekend with us.